Sorry about all that. That was, wow. If you don't know, that was Joe Call. Joe's our executive pastor, and he's probably the most Christ-like man you'll ever meet. And so we absolutely love Joe. We pick on Joe a little bit, but we just want to give a huge shout out to Joe. And I just want to say right up front, working with Joe is one of the highlights of my week. I absolutely, I love, and the more I get to know, I'm impressed with him. And so, Joe, I salute you, and thank you for letting us use your face as a scary thing in this No Fear November, all right? So if you don't know, this is, we're in week 3. We've basically said we've called this month No Fear November. And what we're doing is we're encouraging one another to do the thing that we ought to do. We're encouraging one another to do the thing that we want to do. We're encouraging one another to do the thing that we plan on doing someday, but we've just not got around to it yet. And most often, the reason we haven't gotten around to it yet is because there's some kind of fear. We're afraid of something. We're afraid of rejection. We're afraid of failure. We're afraid of embarrassment. We're afraid of trying again. We're afraid of any number of things, and so we haven't yet done it. And so this entire month, what we're doing is we're talking about fear, and we're encouraging one another to do that thing, to go for it. Like this month, November 2015, do the thing that you've been scared to do, but you wanted to do, but you haven't done yet. And so my hope is that you are actually doing that. That not only that you're doing that thing, but you're also encouraging one another. If you haven't, I just encourage you to reach out to someone and encourage them, like, do the thing. You could actually say that, do the thing. And the one line we've been using, we're going to use it again today, is everything you want is on the other side of fear. Everything you want is on the other side of fear. So we're encouraging one another with these words, right? So I know what it feels like to be afraid. And so what I want to do is I just want to kind of have a little bit of a family talk right now. And there are times like at our house we'll call a family meeting, and that means everybody huddles up around the kitchen table or upstairs in the playroom, and we all sit around and we have a conversation. And this is a little bit of a family meeting. And if this is your first time here, welcome to the family. Pull up your seat, lean in, and I'm just going to tell you this story because it kind of highlights the fact that we all have some fears that we need to face. At our last Wednesday Night Live in July of this month, I shared with you 5 actions that we feel like, our pastors feel like God is calling us to take as a church. And these were the 5 things. We said we believe God is calling us to do these 5 things. We believe He's calling us to baptize regularly. Like one of the things that we've done in the past is we've baptized once or twice a year. We said moving forward, we want to continually call people to go public with their faith in Jesus, to trust Jesus and to go public with it through baptism. So we're going to call people to do that regularly. We also said we believe that God is asking us to move past this 200 plus people on the weekend. And the reason for that simply is we want more and more people to discover God, connect with friends, and become a better person. We think this is a great place to do this. So we're asking God, help us to make space and help us to find ways to connect with more people. Because quite frankly, there's a lot of churches in Rock Hill. But if every single church were filled multiple times on a weekend, there's still a lot of work to be done. And so we're asking God to help us to be effective in this community, reaching out to people, all right? We've also said we want to bring one of our pastors on full time to begin to help us care more effectively for the people who God is bringing to our church and help us care better for them. We're going to plant a church in Texas. We're actually working on that. We'll be bringing you updates soon. And then finally, there's this idea of relocating. Ultimately, we've shared this with you a little bit, but, our church, we are in a leasing contract, which basically means that several times over the last several years, we've been approached and said, hey, you may not be able to stay here much longer. And as it has turned out, here we are. But we continue to put effort into a space that is not a long-term solution, right? And additionally, we kind of keep filling up, and there's not room for more, right? So we fill up, and that's about it. We're about as full as we're going to get unless we do something different. And so these are the things we believe God is calling us as a church to do. Now, that's a lot of stuff. And here's just kind of a look into my heart, Paul Peterson's heart. This stuff makes my belly flop around. You know what I mean by that? You ever, like, you have something that you want to do, it's a goal, it's a mission, it's a responsibility, it's a project that you're working on, and it feels bigger than you are, and it kind of makes your belly flop around. Some people call that nervous, you know what I mean? The belly flop. This stuff makes my belly flop around. And here's why. This is pretty comfortable for me right now. Like, right now, the way we're sitting here is pretty comfortable for me. I mean, I love what we have here. I love the people who walk through the door. I love being able to hug and high five and knuckle bump almost everybody in this room. I love that. I love this group of people. I'm very comfortable. And I know as we do these things, I know that things change for me personally. I know that as we do these things, here's what I know. I know that new people will come, and some of you might even leave because you may not like everything that happens in the church, and you may decide, as some in the past have, I just don't like everything that happens at the church, and this may not be the church for me, and you move on to other places. And by the way, one of the things that I'm very pleased about is the way, I believe this. I believe there's all kinds of churches in our community doing great work. And there have been lots of people who've left our church and gone to other places. And we have a cordial relationship, so much so. I saw one of those couples this week, and we hugged and embraced, encouraged one another. They asked about our church, and I was able to ask about their church. They invited me to go to their church so they could hear them sing in the choir. I told them I probably won't. But, right, I mean, there's something for everybody. And so I know that as we continue to evolve as a church, like, some of you may come to a point where you're like, I don't know if this is the place for me, and you may go somewhere else. I'm going to be honest with you. That makes me sad because I love you. I know that if nothing changes, like if we just kind of stay like we are right now, I know that we'll be okay financially. But if we start changing things, like, it could get tight. Things could get tight financially, and quite frankly, that's scary because that impacts me personally. I am paid by the church. If things get tight, that impacts me. I will take the first hit. And that makes me a little nervous. I'm a little scared about that. I know that if we stay just as we are right now, like, it's okay. I mean, things are going to be good, but if we start making changes, that means there's going to be some tough decisions that need to be made. And here's quite frankly what happens when tough decisions are made. People are disappointed. Well, I wanted that pastor to come on full time, or I wanted to start a church in Charlotte, not Texas, or I don't want to grow I don't want to be a church of 200. I just want to keep it just like it is, or why do we got to relocate? Why can't we just keep here? You know what I'm saying? I mean, when you make tough decisions, people are disappointed, and quite frankly, I don't like to disappoint people. And then there's this makes my belly flop around. I know that by saying all this stuff out loud, like, there's a sense of accountability that comes with saying it out loud. If we don't do them, it means that to some extent we've failed. And so by saying all this stuff out loud, by putting it on the table, by saying out loud, these are the things we believe God has called us to do, there's a little bit of fear that comes with that. And this is being wide open honest here. Makes my belly flop around. And yet I know this, that as a church we have this responsibility. This is not my church. This is not it's God's church. And He's called us to do something. He's called us to create a space. He's called us to create an environment where people can come. We always say this, we want to create a place where people can kind of stagger out of Luke's on Saturday night and right into church on Sunday morning and feel loved and feel affirmed and not be judged and get a high five and a cup of coffee. And this is the kind of environment we want to create. We have to do that, a place where anybody can discover God, a place where anybody can connect with good, healthy friendships, a place where anybody can become a better person. I mean, we have this responsibility, so we have to do this stuff. And here's the thing, ultimately, I would imagine that everyone in this room would say, yeah, that's a good idea. In fact, I'm glad that you did it for me, right? I would imagine that at some point, all of you would say, I think it's a good idea. I think we should create a place where people can discover God and connect with friends and become a better person. I agree with that. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a right thing. I'm glad you did it so that I could be here. But here's the thing. We're just a little bit scared of the changes required to do that thing, to do those things. I know I am. There's always a little bit of fear. And this is the thing that we've been talking about, right? Everything you want is on the other side of fear. Now, what I've just shared with you is an illustration of my personal things that I have to move through and ours as a church. But you've got your own things too. Like you've got things that you really want to do. You've got things that you know you should do. You know things that you have to do. And you plan on doing them someday, but the thing that keeps you from doing them is there's a little bit of fear. And that's why you haven't moved out. So a while ago, I read about a phenomenon called OSM. Now, since my mom might be watching this teaching series, I've renamed it. I'm going to call it OCM. All right? I'll tell you why in a minute. You know what this is, right? It's that moment right before you speak and say that thing that you're going to do. It's that moment right before you start to do it. It's that moment right before you jump. You're terrified, but you go ahead and do it. And right as you're doing it, you have an OCM. You know what that is? Go ahead and say it out loud. An oh crap moment, right? Like, oh crap, and then you're in it. It's happening, it's going, it's on. You're in the fight. You're doing the thing that you've been scared to death to do. I remember the first time I had ever rappelled. Anybody ever go rappelling? Oh man, I love that. First time I ever went, it was our first church I was ever at, and I went with this teenage kid, and looking back on that, it was unbelievably irresponsible of me to go with this kid because he was just a fun, adventurous kid that wasn't like looking back, I'm like, I let him tie the knots that hung me over a cliff. Was that smart? I didn't think about that then. So we got out. I had never been rappelling. It's like, you want to go rappelling? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So we go out. And we're standing on the edge of this, we're standing on this huge rock, and to get to the place where we're going to rappel from, we had to jump over like a 3-foot gap. So we had to jump, and then once we jumped, the way there was a tree there, and the way this whole rock was positioned, once you were on this big rock from which you were going to rappel down, there was really no way to get back over. So once you jumped over that 3-foot crevice, like you had to rappel down. It was a 70-foot cliff, which, may not be huge, but for me in that moment was like, good gosh, the biggest thing I've ever seen, right? It literally took me about 30 minutes to work up the courage to jump over that crevice. I mean, like if there's a 3, like I could jump 3 feet now, like jump, no big deal. There's a big drop in that 3 feet. It took me like 30 minutes, and I'm like, oh man. And here's the thing that made me finally just I will die before I let this kid mock me for not rappelling off this cliff. So in that moment of wisdom, I jumped. And now I'm up on this rock, and the only way to get off this huge rock is to rappel down over the side. I've never rappelled in my life. And even now, I'm out of breath. Maybe it's from jumping, I don't know, but I'm out of breath, and it was scary, man. Because if you haven't rappelled, basically what happens is you tie a rope to a tree, and then you just fall back over the cliff, and you hold on to this rope, and you walk back down the cliff. And I'll never forget, man, he went down. Now he's down. He's like, come on, man. I'm like, oh crap. That's what I was saying. And that's what's in my head. This is I'm terrified, man. And finally, when I started, I held that rope. I'm like, God, if this rope doesn't hold me, I'm going to die. I'm going to fall on the ground, splat wide open. This is and I finally leaned back, and as I was leaning back, I'm like, I hope this rope catches me. Oh crap, I hope this rope, and it caught me. And I rappelled down. It was one of the most exhilarating experiences I've ever had in my life. It was the most amazing. In fact, after that one experience, I went out and bought all of the rigging I need to rappel. Loved it. But there was that moment where I had to press through the fear. I had to move through that OCM to actually experience the exhilaration. Now, I'm reading a book, or I recently finished a book by a guy named Steve Farber, and he wrote a book called The Radical Leap. And I just want to read to you a little bit of what he says about this whole OCM thing. You've just had your OCM. I mean, stop for a minute. You guys know what this feels like? You know what you're getting ready to start something, you're getting ready to ask, for a raise, you're getting ready to start a business, you're getting ready to venture into a new relationship, you're getting ready to start a new training program, whatever it is. There's that moment of, oh man, right? You've just had that. It's the natural built-in human indicator that you're doing or about to do something truly significant. Like you're going to do something important. Fear typically prefaces a significant step. And you're rightfully so scared out of your mind. We've been conditioned to believe that fear is bad. And yes, fear can save your life or keep you from doing something stupid. Check this out. Fear can save your life. Fear can keep you from doing something, but avoiding it can also keep you from doing something great, from learning something new, and from growing as a human being. If you stop because you're afraid, you very possibly end up not doing the great thing or learning the new thing or growing like you could. Look what he says. Fear is a natural part of growth. And since growth, change, and evolution are all on the leader's agenda, fear comes with the territory. In other words, listen to this. This is really big. Here's the point. If you're not having OCMs, you're not growing. If you're not experiencing those, oh, crap moment. I think I just used up the number of craps I can say in one service, haven't I? Is that probably close? If you're not having those in your life, you're not growing. If you're not pressing through fear on a fairly regular basis in your life, welcome to the rest of your life. Because this is where you're going to live. This is how you're going to live. If you don't move through fear, you don't get better, you don't get richer, you don't get smarter, you don't get happier. Now, there's a story in the Bible about a man named Joshua who had an OCM. And the story tells us how God actually helped him and how he navigated through his OCM, through his fear. Now, the story is in the book of the Bible called Joshua, and it goes like this. After the death of Moses, the Lord's servant, the Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant. He said, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now, if you don't know, there was a group of people, the nation of Israel, of people called, we know them today as the Jews, the Israelites, right? And for 400 years, they had been enslaved under the rulership of the nation of Egypt. Egypt had kept the Israelites as slaves for 400 years. Then this man named Moses comes along. He steps up to Pharaoh and he says, I want you to let these people go. These are my people. This is my blood. These are my people. And we are set to be free. Let us go. And there was this back and forth, this exchange, this back and forth. And ultimately, Moses and God led these people, this entire nation, out of slavery and into freedom. Now, so Moses is this hero. He's like this national hero. He had faced down Pharaoh and he'd led them from slavery to freedom. And his status is legendary. Like when you say Moses, you're like, oh, Moses. I mean, Moses was to the Jews like Steve Jobs is to the people of Apple, right? Like, oh, Steve Jobs, like he's just he is, you think Apple, you think Steve, you don't think Tim Cook, you think Steve Jobs, right? You think Israel, you don't think Joshua, you think Moses. All right? No one could ever take his place. But that's exactly what Joshua had to do. He had to replace this legendary leader named Moses. So God says, look, Moses is dead, and here's what I want you to do. He says, the time has come for you, Joshua, to lead these people, the Israelites, across the Jordan River into the land I'm giving them. Now, this is kind of significant because for years, as part of their national lore, that there had been this promise God had made hundreds of years earlier. God had said to the forefathers of the nation of Israel, someday I'm going to give you this prime real estate, and on this prime real estate, you're going to build and develop this incredible country. And so for years, they'd been taught this, and now God says to Joshua, it's your turn. It's time for you to lead these people into this promised land. The time has come. It's an important phrase. We'll come back to it in just a second. So Moses leads these people right up to the land, then he dies, and now it's Joshua's turn to lead them into this promised land. God said, look, I want you to lead these newly liberated people into this land. Now, there's enemies there. There are people who are living there who are going to fight you. They don't want you to have this land, so they're going to fight you. There are obstacles that you're going to have to overcome, but here's what I want you to know, Joshua. No one will be able to stand against you as long as you live. Read this with me, because these last two sentences are important. For I will be with you as I was with Moses. I will not fail you or abandon you. This is God's promise. Look, you're a rookie leader. You're getting ready to have an OCM moment. In fact, you might be having it right now. A huge responsibility, a huge new role in your life, a huge project, a huge undertaking, but I'm going to go with you. I promise you, Joshua, I'm going to be with you. Now, some of you in this room know exactly how Joshua felt when he heard these words. The time has come. Like some of you in this room are in this moment where the time is now. Like you've waited a long time to do that thing. You've waited a long time to have that conversation. You've waited a long time to start that book or that business or that venture, whatever it is. You've waited. It's time. And just between you and me, it's time to get going, or you might actually miss your chance. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. It's time. The time is on. So this is Bronnie Ware, all right? And for years, she was a nurse who provided care for people who were dying. And during their last days, the last weeks, sometimes months, she was able to have conversations with them. So she asked a lot of questions, and she listened a lot as well. And over time, as she had all these conversations, she began to recognize a pattern. She began to recognize a theme that all of these people were saying. Like she would ask them, if you could live all over again, what would you do? What would you not do? And she just learned a lot from. But what she realized is there was a common list of regrets that people who were looking death in the eye all had. She wrote a blog article in which she discussed these things, and millions of people actually read it. It became like this internet sensation. Millions of people read her blog article. She went on to actually put all of it together and write a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. The number one regret that dying people had was this: I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life that others expected of me. I wish I would have done those things that were in my heart to do. I wish I would have pursued those dreams that were in my heart. I wish I would have put a foot out and started moving towards that goal that was always in my heart. She writes, this was the most common regret of all. When people realize that their life is almost over and look back clearly on it, it's easy to see how many dreams have gone unfulfilled. And she says this: most people had not honored even a half of their dreams and had to die knowing that it was due to choices they had made or not made. Health brings a freedom very few realize until they no longer have it. Let me just say this to you. If you walked into church this morning, you still have time. But there will come a day where your health is gone, and you may no longer have the time. And you may no longer have the strength, and you may no longer have the resources, and you may no longer have the option of actually doing the thing that you've always wanted to do, of starting the thing that you've always wanted to start. The number one regret of dying people was simply this: I didn't do the thing that was in my heart. Every single one of us in this room is either having or has had or needs to have a time has come moment. The time has come. This is what God said to Joshua. Joshua, the time has come. It's time to step up. It's time to do this thing of which you've been scared. It's time to get going. So I would just say to you this: if you are feeling that sense of urgency, like I've got to get this thing done, I have to go about it and put feet on it and make this happen, you're going to love what God says to Joshua next. Because I believe that God is saying similar things to us, his church, to us, his people. God laid out a game plan for Joshua. He said, Joshua, the time is now. You got to do this thing. And he lays out a game plan for how to do it. Here's what he says. Joshua, be strong and courageous, for you are the one who will lead these people to possess all the land I swore to their ancestors I would give them. Be strong and courageous. I love the fact that God says those two words, be strong and courageous. Because if you look in the dictionary, you'll find that strength has to do with outward activity and courage has to do with inward activity. Let me show you. Strength, this is dictionary. The quality or state of being strong, bodily or muscular power, vigor, God says, on the outside, I want you to be strong. And then on the inside, look what he says. I want you to be courageous. Courage, according to the dictionary, says, the quality of mind or spirit that enables a person to face difficulty, danger, pain, etc., without fear. Bravery. In essence, God looks at Joshua and says, Joshua, I want you to be tough and resilient on the inside and on the outside. And you can do this, Joshua, because I will always be with you. Like you can stare down fear because I will be with you. You can jump over that 3-foot crevice because I will be with you. You can go over the 70-foot cliff because I will be with you. You can have that conversation. You can start that thing. You can begin that venture because I will be with you. In other words, he's like, look, don't let your body freak your mind out, right? Or don't let your body shut your mind down. Don't let your mind freak your body out. I want you to be strong and courageous. So if you're having, listen, if you're having an OCM, like you're thinking about starting that thing, you're thinking about it and you're like afraid, you know what happens. Like your body begins to get, in fact, they did some research. The Navy SEALs did some incredible research on this. And they found that when we get scared, our body freaks out. Let me just read to you just a little bit. This is what they said. To learn how to control fear, you must understand your body's natural response to it. They said your body, when you're afraid, there's an increased heart rate and breathing. Isn't that true? Like you can be sitting still and you're afraid and your heart starts to beat faster. Isn't it true? Like I was watching The Walking Dead the other night. Hey, the Walking Dead plug. All right. And like I'm just sitting there and all of a sudden my heart beats faster, right? Just a little bit, you're scared, right? All right. Queasiness or butterflies, you get that in your stomach. Dizziness, dry mouth, sweating, tremors and shakes, dilated pupils, slurred speech. All of this is physical. And God essentially says to Joshua, like your body's going to freak out a little bit, Joshua, when you're scared, but here's what I want you to do. Be, say it, strong, brave, have courage, right? You know this stuff is going to happen. Don't let it stop you from doing the thing that I've created you to do, from doing the thing that I've called you to do, from doing the thing that I've placed in your heart. So be ready. Don't let it deter you. Now here's the game plan. He says to Joshua, be strong and courageous, for you are the one who will lead these people to possess all the land I swore to their ancestors I would give them. Here's the game plan, right? There's a very clear vision here. God says, Joshua, I want you're here right now, and I want you to go here. You're currently doing this. I want you to end up doing this. There's a very clear vision, a very clear picture of what he was going to do. Now, I would just say this, that probably a lot of people are scared of the future because they're not sure what needs to be done. They're not sure what it is exactly they're going to do. Like Joshua had a very clear idea of what he was going to do. I mean, how much clearer can you get? You are going to lead these people to possess all this land. You're standing here, you're going to be over there. That's the thing you're going to do. Very clear picture. Now, along the way, there's all kinds of little details that he wasn't aware of, he wasn't certain about, but he knew the end destination. This is where I'm going to end up. And I would just say to you, if you don't have a clear sense of what it is that you're to do, if you don't have a clear sense of what your future looks like, I would encourage you strongly to pray. Like, talk to God. Tell him that. Talk to a mentor. Tell someone like I'm not sure exactly what it is the future looks like. Because when you have a clear picture of what the future looks like, that begins to instill courage within your heart. It did for Joshua. And here's the other thing. If you don't do this, if you don't have a clear sense of what your future looks like, someone else will create it for you. And do you remember the number one regret of dying people? My biggest regret is that I didn't do the thing that I wanted to do. Instead, I did the thing that everyone else wanted me to do. If you don't have a clear sense of the thing that's in your heart, the thing that God has created you to do, the thing that God is calling you to do, I would encourage you to pray. Talk to some mentors. Talk to some friends. Take time to write and think so that you don't get old and find a heart filled with regret. Now, God said, very clear picture of what your future looks like. Then he said this, and this is really, really important. He said, be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the instructions Moses gave you. Don't deviate from them. Don't turn to the right or to the left. In other words, do exactly what they say. Then you'll be successful in everything you do. Then he says this, study this book of instruction continually. Meditate on it day and night so you'll be sure to obey everything written in it. Only then will you prosper and succeed in all you do. So, two things that are really clear here. When you're having that OCM, right, it's time to go, but I'm kind of scared, but I know the time has come, so I need to go ahead and do this thing. Two things that will help you prepare, right? Number one, simply this, thorough, and this, by the way, some of this stuff is just like, you're going to be like, I know that, but sometimes we just need a heavy prompt, a big push. And this one comes from a story of Joshua and God, right? Thorough preparation. Look what God said to Joshua. Be careful to obey all the instructions Moses gave you. Do not deviate from them, turning either to the left or to the right or to the left. Study this book of instruction continually. Meditate on it day and night so you be sure to obey everything written in it. Now, this is important, what was just said. It was clear God didn't want Joshua to just jump into this blindly. Hey, Josh, there's the land. Good luck, buddy. Go get it. He said, don't do this blindly. I want you to prepare thoroughly. I've given you all kinds of instruction. I want you to think about it. I want you to read it. I want you to study it. I want you to meditate it. I want you to prepare yourself thoroughly for this thing that you're getting ready to do. Now, this is really important. Everybody awake, because this is really important. Ready? Most of our mistakes are made. By the way, I told Joe Call this morning, I'm like, I feel like I should be sitting on the front row, because as I'm reading through this story and I'm preparing to teach this lesson, I'm like, oh man, this is tough because this is me. Most of our mistakes are made. By the way, this is why we have Joe Call as a pastor on our team, because he helps fill in all the blanks, right? Now I'm going to finish the sentence right now, okay? Most of our mistakes are made because we have not thoroughly prepared. We just get excited and we go. There's no training, there's no planning, there's no prayer, there's no discussion, there's no strategizing. We just jump and land flat on our face. And what that sets us up for is more fear in the future. We say things like this, well, I tried that once and failed. You're right. You did fail because you didn't prepare at all. There was no plan. Now, you may have heard this before, but I want to share this with you again. Proper planning prevents poor performance. Now, there's another P that goes in there, but I figured I've used the word C too much to use the word P in here, right? Proper planning prevents poor performance. You know this, correct? This is a really big deal. And this is exactly what God is saying to Joshua. You've got this huge undertaking, buddy, but before you do it, I want you to thoroughly prepare yourself. Now, that could look different for each one of us in this room. If you're getting ready to start a business, maybe you're writing out a business plan and you're thinking through a budget. If you're getting ready to have a difficult conversation with someone, it's writing out all of the details of this conversation. Whatever the case may be, thoroughly prepare yourself to take that step. If your time has come and you're experiencing that OCM, do what God told Joshua to do and prepare. But preparation, here's the key, preparation all by itself won't ever move you through fear. Tony Robbins said this, look at this. Knowledge is not power. He said knowledge is potential power. Execution is power. In other words, you can know all the right things to do. You can have the perfectly laid plan. But unless you actually do something, nothing changes. You can have done all the research and had all the conversations and read all the books and you have this incredible plan, but unless you actually begin to do something, nothing happens. In Joshua's story, God said there is a time for thorough preparation, but then there's a time for courageous action. At some point, you have to execute, Joshua. Look what he said to Joshua. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the instructions Moses gave you. Do not deviate from them, turning either to the left or to the right. In other words, prepare, 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 prepare. Then you will be successful in everything you, say it, do. Prepare thoroughly and then do this thing. God said, if you'll do this stuff, if you prepare thoroughly, if you hear my heart, if you'll find my wisdom and prepare, and when you actually do, you will experience success, he says. Look what else he says. Study this book of instruction continually. Meditate on it day and night so you'll be sure to obey everything in it. In other words, prepare thoroughly, Joshua, because you've got a big responsibility ahead of you. Only then will you prosper and succeed in all you do. All the study in the world with no action equals nothing. And lots of action with no study equals almost a guaranteed failure. God said there's two things that need to happen. Number one, you need to have a clear vision of what it is I'm calling you to do. Number two, you need to actually thoroughly prepare. And number three, it requires courageous action. So a few weeks ago, I read a line that has just stuck with me, and it has to do with this thing we're talking about right now. Here it is. One way to kill an opportunity is to avoid taking it. And there are people in this room, I guarantee it, to have an opportunity right now, right in front of you. It's the thing that you've waited to do. You're confident that this is the thing that someday you hope to do. You want to do it. You know you ought to do it. It's your opportunity. The truth is, if you don't take this thing, if you don't prepare and act, it may pass you by. Your belly's flopping around. You're feeling the force of that OCM. You know it's the right thing to do. The question is, will you do it? Or will you wait for a better day? You ever do that? I'll just wait. The time isn't right. I'm going to wait for a better day. I'm going to wait till spring, and then spring comes. Well, the ground is wet, so I'll wait till summer. Well, it's too hot. How about if I wait till fall? Well, gosh, there's so many leaves on the ground. How about if I wait till winter? Oh my gosh, it snowed. Always another reason. I'm taking this opportunity. There are things in my life right now that I am saying, yes, God, it is time, and I'm personally terrified. We're taking it as a church. We're taking those steps. What are you going to do? Are you going to take it? Are you going to go for it, or are you going to stay here? And before you make your decision, this is important. Before you make your decision about whether you're going to go or you're going to stay, look what God said to Joshua. This is my command, Joshua. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you. Read this last with me, please. Wherever you go. Here's something kind of neat. As I read this, all of a sudden this line occurs to me. God is with the goers. Now, theologically, we believe God is everywhere all the time. Is God with those who stay? Yeah. But his heart is with the goers. All throughout Scripture, you find God calling people to move out, and he says to them, when you go, I will go with you. In Matthew chapter 28, the Great Commission, Jesus said to his disciples, I want you to go into all the world, make disciples of all nations. And then he said this famous line, remember this? I will always be with you. The heart of God is with people who are going. And if you're sitting in a place of fear, there's a huge likelihood that you're missing God's greatest resources. Why would he use his greatest resources on someone who's not moving? Perhaps the very thing in your heart that's calling you, that dream, that idea, that hope, that thing that you've always said, maybe when you begin to do that, you will begin to experience God in a bigger way than you've ever experienced. God said to Joshua, I will go with you wherever you go. So here's what I want for all of us to do. Throughout Joshua's story, God said, I'm going to be with you. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to be with you. He gave him a 3-part plan. This is what it looked like. Joshua, have a clear vision. If you don't know what that vision is, get on your knees and start seeking God. Talk with a mentor. Start writing. Start thinking. Spend some time quietly by yourself in the presence of God saying, what is that thing that you're calling me to do? And when you find it, Joshua or whomever you are, begin to thoroughly prepare yourself. Prepare. Study, research, think, pray. Get this plan together. And once the plan is together, go for it. Move out. And God says, I will be with you wherever you go. Now, here's what I want to encourage you to do. Start identifying that thing. What is the thing that you need to do? Maybe it's a conversation that you need to have with somebody. Maybe you need to forgive someone, right? Maybe it's an action that you need to take, a job you need to start, or something. What is that thing? And tell somebody about it. You could actually say it on our church Facebook page. If you're courageous enough to put it out there, put it on the church Facebook page, facebook.com/mychurch180. Share it with your life group. Tell a mentor. Tell a friend. The God of Christians, our God, said, I will go with you when you go. So let's go. We've got 2 weeks left in November. Imagine what would happen if every person in this room hit go and started. Be pretty incredible. Now, here's what I want to do. I want to pray for us. And then the band is going to come up, and they're going to lead us in a psalm that speaks words of commitment to God. It basically says, all I have is yours. I'm going to throw fear to the side, and I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do this thing, God, that you've called me to do. I'm not going to be afraid. November 2015 is going to be a benchmark month in my life. So, Father, I want to reach out to you this morning, Lord, and say thank you for this big promise that we have. That as we seek your heart and as we find that dream, as we find that vision, as we identify that thing, that project, that mission, that responsibility, that conversation, as we identify that thing and as we move through fear, as we prepare ourselves and as we put our feet on the road and start to move through that fear, your promise is, I will go with you. You are with the goers. Give us courage, Father, to square our shoulders and step up and do the thing, God, that you've called us to. Remind us, God, regularly of the words that you spoke to Joshua, which are your words to all of us. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged. Be strong and courageous, because I will be with you wherever you go. November 2015. This is the month, this is the year that we make decisions and take big actions, God, that revolutionize our present and change our future. Give us your courage. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.